What's up, y'all? Daniel, barbering.com, and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today, I have a customer interview with Geordann. Geordann is a customer of the Elevated Mentorship Program, and you are in Smyrna, Tennessee, correct?
Yeah, that's where I cut it. I cut in Smyrna, Tennessee. It's about 20 miles outside of Nashville.
Attaboy. Yeah. So, like, I know. I mean, I think you were the first barber in Tennessee to join the program. I know you've
I
been. Go ahead.
I think I am.
Yeah, I think there's a well. I know Serge is from Tennessee as well too, but I remember because you joined the program. I think we were talking just before last October, so about 11, 10 months ago. Um, and I kind of just wanted to bring you on, kind of just highlight your journey. I know when we started working together, you were in like kind of like the neighborhood barbershop. You were charging $25. I mean, you were overworked as hell, honestly. I think also too, your first call we had with each other, you actually had to miss because you of the birth of your kid, so we had to
Yeah,
like postpone it.
my wife went into labor the night before we were supposed to do my interview. So the day we were supposed to do my interview was the day that my daughter was actually born. So
Yeah, yeah, and typically, honestly, like typically for like people who miss those calls, I'm just like, fuck them. Like, like we'll kind of like whenever they're ready, they'll come back. But I remember seeing your stuff, and I was like, fuck, this dude's so talented. And also too, like you can't like predict like your child being born. So I was like, cool,
yeah,
let's go ahead and reschedule. I definitely wanted to like kind of like highlight your journey from like again to you were charging 25. Now we're up to 60, and like you just went up to 60. What was it last week?
yeah, on this past Thursday.
And I know like again a big thing for you was like, dude, you didn't even think you could probably go up, probably past. I mean, I don't know if it was like past 25, but you had like a really low limit set on yourself before prior, correct?
Yeah, I really thought like to me anything beyond 50 was like pushing the limit. Like I thought 50 was probably the max that I could go.
Got it. Well, let's go ahead and start with at least like for people who don't know you, get a little more familiar with who you are, how you got into barbering, how you got into the shop, and kind of like the journey prior like to at least discovering the elevated mentorship program.
Yeah. So I started cutting hair in high school when I was probably like 14 years old. I'm the oldest of six kids, and five of us were boys. Around my sophomore year in high school, things got really tough for us with my mom being sick or whatever. So I was working, bought some clippers, started cutting on myself and my siblings. It was something I was naturally drawn to, and I just continued throughout high school. I initially wanted to go to barber school right out of high school, but like my uncles and aunts and stuff around me, like everybody really wanted me to go to college. So they were like, "You're smart. You're really good at math and science." My uncle even tried to get me to go to the Air Force. So I kind of put barbering on the back burner. It was something I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to do. Um, so I still cut hair out of my dorm room in college. I did 2 years in college and then was like, this isn't for me. So even then, I didn't start my barbering career. I was still in Cincinnati, which is where I'm from. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I was still in Cincinnati until I was about 21. A friend of mine, my closest friend, he transferred to Tennessee State University in Nashville, and he reached out to me and asked me would I be willing to move. So moved to Nashville in 2010, and I was just working. I had a call center job. I eventually worked my way up to be like a trainer in the learning and development. And then something weird happened. I think I left there to take another job, and something weird didn't work out with the job within like 30 days. And so that's when I made the decision that I was going to go ahead and go to barber school. So that was in 2013. I started barber school while I was working nights at a hotel. So I was working third shift at a hotel. I would drive, park my car in the parking lot when I got off at 6 in the morning, and I would let my seat back and take a nap. And then whatever instructor would get there first, they would knock on my window and let me into school. Um, so I ended up finishing. I was going part time, so I finished barber school in 2015, May of April of 2015. No, May of 2015. I got my license in June 2015, and then I started working in a barber shop that one of the instructors owned. He recruited me straight out of school, so that's kind of how I started. So I've been a professional since 2015.
So you you didn't like you really got like I guess swayed off of the barber route because it sounded like you actually wanted to cut hair like full time, but like people kind of swayed you
Yeah.
to go to college, and then also once you moved to Tennessee, you didn't go right into back to cutting hair. Were you like still was it still like a part time thing, and like were you just like moved to Tennessee and then kind of like at this job people kind of slowly found out about you, or how'd you build up there?
So I kind of still was putting barbering on the back burner. I was contemplating going back to college because once I got promoted at the job that I was at, I kind of liked teaching and training. So I was like, well, maybe I just went to college for the wrong thing. So I contemplated going back to school to be a teacher. It just never ended up working out. When I applied to go back to school, it was a bunch of hangups. But all the while, I was still cutting my own hair, and um, I was cutting people at the job because they would ask me who cut my hair. Because honestly, when I first got here, dude, like no disrespect to anybody in Tennessee or any barbers, but it was hard to find like good barbers here, like that cut to the same like acumen as guys in Ohio. So I just kept cutting my own hair. And I would cut people at work, and people just kept telling me like, you need to go to school, you need to go to school, you need to do this for a living. And it wasn't really until like that little hang up happened with in between jobs where I was like, my back was against the wall, and I was like, you know what, I need to stop playing around, and I'm gonna start taking my own future into my own hands. And so it was really kind of a thing where honestly, like you hear people talk about when they get out of college and they start working, and it's hard for them to go back because you're making money. And so that's kind of what it was.
Yeah, I was about to say like why I mean, it sounded like you really enjoyed cutting hair. Was it? I was gonna say, is it more of like that safety net, or is it because you were just like had a safe amount of money, and then barbering was just something like you had to do more time and school for and build it up even more? It was like that. You don't want to trade that time for like money right now.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. And then me not having a set schedule as a trainer, because there would be times where I would be at work from 8 in the morning to like midnight, 1 o'clock, because of the workload that I was handling. So it was kind of that, and again, it was honestly, and it was a lot of immaturity and a lot of extracurricular stuff that I was doing that I probably shouldn't have been. That took my mind off of track of what I was supposed to be doing, because that was supposed to be the goal. The goal was for me to get to Nashville, maybe work a little bit, and then figure out a way to get into school. Because at the time, there wasn't a lot of barber schools where you could use your financial assistance from the Department of Education. So, like where I was in Cincinnati, there was one barber school at the time, and you had to pay out of pocket. So that's what deterred me from going to school in Ohio. And then when I got to Nashville, the goal was for me to work, build up cash so that I could pay my way through barber school.
No shit. Okay.
Um,
Well, what was like your idea of barbering? Even like, did you think like? Because I know you said you wanted to go back and be a teacher. Was like money ever like a worry like oh, I don't think I can make enough money as a barber, or like I don't really want to charge that. But like, what was your perception like back then of like barbering as a career, or just being a full time barber?
so I never really knew like how much money barbers made. I honestly didn't even know like how like the structure of the way barbers got paid. The barber I went to growing up from like the fifth grade all the way until I left Cincinnati, um, it was a family barbershop that he ran, so it was like passed down. And I never really thought to ask him like how barbers got paid and things like that. I obviously felt like they made a lot of money because the barbershop was always packed that I went to,
Sure.
like always.
Yeah.
Like I would go at like 6 o'clock in the morning and on Saturdays and be there till like 2, 3 in the afternoon. So I just was very intrigued by like the 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 actual like action of cutting hair. Like I was very intrigued by it. It was something that I naturally like was good at. I took an acumen too, so I wasn't really sure how barbers got paid, but I never thought that like, oh, they don't get paid enough money. But what did deter me was like when I was in high school, my senior year in high school, and I was telling people that I wanted to be a barber, and people were kind of like, that I think that deterred me more so than anything else, because I felt like if I went to be a barber, I felt like I would be letting people down because they thought I had so much more potential. So that was always in the back of my head, like barbering is like something that you kind of, unless it's like a family business, it's just something you kind of fall back on.
Yeah. It's not like a first choice. It's like a fuck, I fucked
Right.
up, like, or like I messed up. Let me go cut some hair, get some money, and then I'll go do something else type of deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, so you got, of course, you went to barber school, graduated. You got in this shop that you said the school owner like either owned or like had to hook up with. Like, how did you? What year was this, by the way?
So this was 2015, and it was one of the instructors that worked at the school. He had just fired everybody that worked in his shop. He had like made everybody, all the guys that he had in there leave because he was trying to change the perception of the shop.
Okay.
So I was like one of the first guys he recruited because like of the way I kind of carried myself in school. Even though I was working a third shift job, I was working a part-time job up until like my last 3 months in school, and then I quit work, and I just put all of my focus into finishing school. But like even with me working a part-time like third shift, I'd be falling asleep in class sometimes. I never failed any of my tests. I think the lowest grade I got on any of the tests was like a 90. I always turned in my work assignments, my homework assignments, and like there were people who didn't have jobs at all, and like they wouldn't turn in their assignments or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I showed a different level of work ethic and like commitment to it, and just a different attitude, and he wanted that for the next phase of his barbershop.
Yeah. You just weren't sloppy or a dumbass. Like you just were like
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
taking it seriously, like how it should be taken,
yeah.
not like, like, oh, let me just cut this hair, you give me this money type of deal, and like hustle it out. You already had like
Right.
that.
Like on lunch breaks, I'm like studying YouTube videos or cutting hair, or I'm studying in my book, or like even our like other breaks, like I'm in my book, whereas everybody else is like going out around the side of the building smoking weed. You know what I'm saying? Type of
Yeah,
thing.
it's like every barber school, like the like on break or in between, cause you go. I remember like even like with the instructor too. The instructor would be smoking weed. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this? All right, so it was a rebrand. So like, how'd you build up clientele then? I mean, I'm assuming you had some type of clientele, but probably wasn't booked out. Like, what were you doing at first in this shop?
Yeah, so for me it was tough because me being not from Nashville, a lot of people relied on like just reaching out to people they went to school with, close friends and family and stuff like that. I didn't really have that option. My dad is from Nashville, so he's got some family here, but we're not really close. So I didn't have that side of family to rely on. So I really just relied on reaching out to people who I used to work with that knew that I cut hair. And outside of that, like I picked up a few clients from the barber school. And then it was really just doing it on my own. The barbershop I went to, the guy that owned it, Sean, he had built up a pretty decent reputation for the shop. So there was a lot of people, a lot of walk-in traffic that kind of had dissipated because he was the only one there, and so he was like booked out. So when I came in, there was, and people started realizing that there was somebody else there. They would come there because of the atmosphere. Like it was in the hood, like, but it didn't feel like the hood in the barbershop. So like they'd rather come there because it was safe for their kids, a good environment for kids and women and stuff like that, where some of the other barbershops around us weren't. So a lot of my clientele building initially came from walk-ins.
Got it. And just carrying yourself well, like being again to a good environment, like making sure like you guys aren't dumbasses. The place doesn't smell like weed and like.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the first shop I worked in, dude. There was like cockroaches. You'd walk in the morning, there's cockroaches. You got to sweep up, like like just sloppiness. So how long did it take you to build up? Like, because again, too, you only had some family, some clients, like from past. How long did it take you to build out to be, I guess, to where you were booked, and like what were you charging at that point in time?
So when I first started, I was charging 15 for
Jesus, dude.
haircuts. Yeah, and, it was 12 for anybody that was under 13. It was $12. And then we also had days like Tuesday was like kids was $9. Wednesday was like 15% off for senior citizens. Like it was all kind of crazy stuff. But yeah, so it was 15 for haircut, 25 for haircut and beard is what I started off at. It probably took me to build up a decent clientele. It probably took me about until like that following January. So probably like 8 months.
Really?
I was at I was probably making about 800. I was taking home about $800 a week before booth rent. So at $15 a haircut, like that's
You had to do
That's a lot
fucking
of
volume.
hair.
You had to do a lot of
Yeah.
volume each week, dude.
Um, so yeah, so probably I would say probably like the beginning of February is when I realized that I was pretty busy, especially on the weekends, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Um, so that's when I started kind of getting to the point where like I was kind of being full. Shortly after that, I would probably say that following April, I made a price raise from 15 to 23, and I started taking appointments. And I didn't think 15 to 23 was a big jump, but there were some people who like literally like pulled me to the side and was like, "Dude, I can't do $23."
Yeah.
I had some people pull me to the side and was like, "You can't charge $23 on it's called the road we were on is Dickerson Road,
Mm.
East Nashville. You can't charge $23 on Dickerson Road." But the shop owner encouraged me. He was going up to like 30. I didn't feel that I was good enough to go to where he was. So I was like, 23 sounds, he tossed out a number. He's like, just go to 23. I'm like, all right, that sounds good. Like no market research, no nothing. He's just like 23. Yeah.
That was it. Just pick a fucking random number.
Yeah, yeah. Like, it was weird. And then he said something like, yeah, if you go to 23 instead of 25, people will probably pay you 25 anyway.
Oh
And then
yeah.
keep the change. Yeah.
Yeah, we did that same damn thing too. Where it's like, man, if we charge 16, people will fucking feel guilty because they don't want to afford the extra dollars. They don't want dollar bills. They'll just give us a 20, and like still you would have those people that be like, no, can I have the change?
Yeah,
And which
can I
always
get
it's
my
yeah, I'm just like, dude, this isn't working. All right, so like, what was that? 15 to 23. That's like what, $8? $8. Well, what happened after that? Because again, too, you had people fuck $8 and you had a fucking upwards by the sounds of it. It's like what
Yeah.
happened? Like was it actually a major shift or people just kind of like getting like their shit in a bunch? Like what was kind of going on?
At that point, I probably was overbooked. Like I was turning people away. It got to a point where I decided because it was also a shift in the way that I operated. That was around the time that I had first met my wife. So we were in a relationship. Before that, when I was single, I would be in the shop till 8, 9, 10, 10:30 on Fridays and Saturdays because I didn't have anything to do. Didn't have anybody to that wanted my time. So like I would cut hair to like 10, 10:30, and then like call my homeboys and go like hang out and blow like a quarter of the money I made that
Yeah.
day. And
Yeah.
then a shift happened right before I kind of met my wife where I decided I was ready to start dating, and so I stopped letting people come in last minute. People would show up at like 8 o'clock, and I started turning people away. Like cutting things off at like 7:30, 8 o'clock. And I started turning people away. I started being real strict with like making sure I took a lunch break. We changed our hours on Saturdays so that I wouldn't be in, didn't want to be in the shop on Saturdays all day either. So we moved up to starting at 6 a.m. and being done by 3. So there was a few changes that were made, and it actually made it to where I didn't really see a drop off in the heads that I was cutting, even though I saw a drop off in people that I cut, because it gave the people who really respected me, it gave them the opportunity to be able to get in without the hassle. And it really just cut out a lot of the riffraff, people trying to show up at 9 o'clock at night to get me to cut their hair, or people trying to get me to cut them on my lunch break and like not take a lunch and stuff like that.
Got it. Okay. So, how old were you when you? I mean, like you were. It sounded like you were like ready to start dating and like find somebody to settle down with. How old were you when that happened?
So I was 2016, so I was like 27 going on 28, about to
Oh
be
shit.
28.
Yeah. Okay. And then you met your wife. I'm assuming. I mean, did that have any effect of just like, of course, now you have somebody to give that you're building a relationship with. You have to allocate time towards that too, and you have a business, and you're charging 23, 20. It's kind of shifting where you have to take lower volume. What was going through that? Because I'm single, never definitely not married or have any kids. So, like, what was that like for you?
Um, it was tough because before I met my wife, I wasn't very time conscious.
Mm.
So, and again, when you're single, you don't really have to be. Like I would stay on time with my appointments and stuff, but as far as like keeping track of what time I get off of work, how long I take once I'm done with my last heads from the time that I leave. So that was all stuff that I had to start being conscious of. And then that was when I really started paying attention to like how much money I was actually making, like and like putting a system in place to like count my money. Because I remember she asked me, and I was like, I don't know, about like I don't know, somewhere between like $800-900 a week. I don't know. She's
Mm.
like, what? I'm like, yeah, like I just take my money and at the end of the night. I was banking with SunTrust. It was one across the street. And like I get done kind of like done working, and I would just go and deposit, my money into my bank account. Um, and so like I wasn't really keeping track of how much money I was making. I just had like roundabout numbers. Um, and so like when you meet somebody who like y'all feel like there's a future that could be built, like that stuff matters. Like how much money you make, or at least knowing how much money you make, uh, matters. You know what I mean, for planning and things like of that nature. So that kind of shifted my perspective on that because it made me realize like, dude, you need to start being an adult and like know how much money you make and not
Mm.
just taking your cash in your pocket and leaving and being like, oh, I think I made this today.
Was that like a because of course you were at 23. Did that also prompt you to go up another $2 to 25, or like how what else did you change in the business? Obviously, like did you clean up with this, I guess, new relationship and like understanding this is building for the long term now?
So the way I ended up getting to 25 from 23, I actually had to go back in price. And what happened was, um, where where I lived when I met my wife was probably like 25 minutes from where I was working at, and then where she lived was even further. Um, so fast forward, we got married in 2017. I was still charging 23. But my clientele had gotten much stronger. I started really handling my business, and I saw a shift in my clientele. Like I wasn't cutting like you know misfits and like dope boys anymore. Like I started attracting like professional, like high end, like professional type clientele. So fast forward to 2017, we get married, and I just moved because I had an apartment. Um, me and my dad had a two-bedroom apartment. My dad took a job in Orlando the same month that we got married, so it just made sense for us to move in. My wife had a condo that she had bought. It just made sense for us to move into the condo. So that's how I ended up in Smyrna. So it was like a 35, 40-minute drive
Mm.
from home to work. Uh, and then Nashville traffic is horrible, so my hours had to be like 10 to 7 because if I tried to go in at like 9, 8 or 9, I'm in rush hour traffic. If I try to leave at like 5 or 6, I'm in rush hour traffic. And so um, somebody told me about this barbershop in Smyrna. It's actually a client of mine, a guy he went to school with, had a barbershop in Smyrna. I finally reached out to him. So when I went to that shop, their pricing was $21 for a haircut. And I let the owner know, like, well, right now I'm charging 23, and I kind of was thinking about possibly going up to 25. And he was like, well, if that's what you charge your clients that book with you, fine. But if you take walk-ins, I want you to charge the walk-ins the price that's on the board. I didn't feel like that was fair to my clients, so I made a decision that just everybody would pay 21.
Mm.
So 23 back to 21 when I changed location. And then shortly after, once I got my clientele built at the new location, then I went back up to 25.
Got it. That's interesting. I didn't know that was like the jump. All right, so now you're at 25. Wife, did family start coming into play? Because I know like 25, that's when we started talking, or like at least when we had our first call. I know when we had our first call, I think you were only working like 3 days out of the week, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Working 3 days out the week. I went to that schedule because early in 2020, I got an offer to come and be an instructor. I got recruited to be an instructor at a school from a guy who's like a mentor of mine. He's still kind of a mentor of mine. Um, he he opened his own school about a year prior, and it got to the point where he had enough students, he needed help. So he recruited me to come, and so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I would go and instruct at the school, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I would go into the shop. After COVID, one of the partners of because he opened the school as a partnership so that he could like work under their financial aid, like their accreditability or their accreditation, so that he could take financial aid. Well, about 3 months after we were able to open back up from COVID, the partner pulled out, so the school had to close.
Interesting. Okay. Well, why did you go in that direction? Because like, was it more of just like, again, like you weren't happy doing like the hair cutting? You were trying to like maybe transition to maybe full time teaching into something. Like, what was that decision, or were you just like kind of bored overall?
So at that time, my thinking was, and I had thought about it prior. My thinking was, going back to like when I was a trainer or whatever. I always did like teaching people, the things that I know. So for me, that was an opportunity for me to combine the the craft that I loved, which is barbering, and then teaching. Um, and I also thought that I had kind of reached a peak as far as like barbering. Like I thought that I was getting close to being pretty much tapped out as far as my potential of clients. And so I looked at it like I have a choice. Either I can start expanding my hours and trying to cut more hair, or I could try to get faster and cut more heads in the time that I'm here, or I can look at another avenue that's still within the industry. And so my thinking then was that I'll go into instructing and kind of work my way into becoming like a platform educator.
Got it. Well, why didn't you? I mean, that's kind of like going everywhere except like where we're going right now. But like, why didn't why didn't you think like charging more? I mean, was it just because of the city? Was it because I know we talked a little bit before? Like, you even had like, even when you first joined, you're like, I don't know if I could do 150. But like, what was it that just didn't even think about like going up and charging more for yourself?
So at the time, based off of what I had, the education that I had been given in the barber industry, it's like I had gone to shows and I would go to classes every opportunity that I got. I would go to Bronner Brothers. We had a couple of hair shows here, and I would go to the education. There was only one person that I saw that spoke on methods to raise your pricing, and that was Ivan Zoo. And his method was basically the get booked out, raise your price, get booked out method. So it's like you need to, but that involved first, like being able to get yourself to where you could cut 3 heads an hour.
Jesus
So
fuck.
then you get booked, and this is in his book.
Jesus.
Um, and you get booked out. You get to where you can cut 3 heads an hour. You get 80% booked at that rate. Then you go up. Then you drop your timing down to 2 heads an hour. And I think that at that point you can charge. He said you charge 40, right? You charge $40 a haircut, 2 heads an hour. You get 80% booked out at that. Then you go up to where you do 1 head an hour at $60, and then you get booked out at that, and then you can raise up to 80 and $100. So that was the only method that I had come across in which you could raise your prices beyond 30,
Yeah.
$35.
Got it. Like, it's very basic, and in theory, it makes a lot of sense. Like, in theory, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that seems easy. But like, I mean, I'm a big, I'm very, I think I'd say damn near every Q&A call. Theory and practice are two different things. So like for you, like, was the practice very different than what the theory of that was, or like why didn't you do that? Like, was it again too like kind of
Oh,
just
I
going back to
tried.
fear?
I tried. So I got myself to where I could do a haircut and beard in 30 minutes. So once I got there, I was like, okay, let's go ahead and put the work in and try to get down to where I can finish any client or any haircut in 20 minutes. I couldn't do it. Like it was possible for me to finish the haircut in 20 minutes, but I wasn't satisfied with the quality that I was able to put
Yeah.
out in 20 minutes. And that's where I hit the snag, and I was like, I can't do this because I'm not willing to allow myself to experience the drop off in quality to achieve this first part of this plan. So the plan fell apart at the beginning.
Okay.
Like first
Yeah.
step, plan failed. It was like,
Yeah.
man. So after that, like that was when I thought about, okay, there was instructing, and then I was like, well, and then I can use instructing and the platform that I have for instructing. I thought about creating a product line.
Oh man, you're going all over the
Um,
place.
so I was looking in the yeah, seriously. I got my closest friend has a clothing brand.
Um,
I had talked to him about doing a collaboration on like a T-shirt. So I was looking at all these different things like all over the place as far as like ways to be able to increase my income
yeah.
without having to cut more hair.
Yeah, you were looking everywhere except the one business that you already had up and running. You were like trying to like no like you were trying to take the path of least resistance, where like the thing that actually gives you the most resistance actually will probably give you the most profit in the long run if you can
Yeah,
figure it out. All right,
yeah.
well I'm pretty sure maybe like I mean how long did you come across? Because I think you came across an ad. It was probably like on Instagram or Facebook at that point in time. Was this like around that time frame, or was there more time in between, or?
So the school shut down. It was shortly after. So the school shut down in August. So school shut down in August. At that point, we still hadn't really bounced back from like we were bouncing back from my clientele was bouncing back a little bit from like the whole COVID scare and like the shutdown because we had to shut down from like the whole month of April and like the first 2 weeks of May before we could open back up. The school was closed even longer. So during this shutdown, like I'm looking into that's when I started looking into stuff outside of barbering, like not even products. I'm looking into like doing real estate investing. I tried a Susu or a blessing loom or whatever thing. I
A
burned
what?
on that like 3 times.
What was it?
It's like this thing. It's called like they call them like blessing
Oh,
looms.
you talking about little circle things,
The
huh?
circle, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I call them like
So
circle scams.
one of the guys I worked with in the shop, he had a client, told him about it. He was
Yeah,
convinced. He talked to everybody in the shop. We all got in. Talked to my wife. My wife got it. We all got burned.
yeah.
It fell apart.
Those things are like the pyramid scheme meccas right there. Like legit,
Yeah,
like it's legit, like showing you it's a pyramid almost.
yeah. They
I'm,
like just changed it from a pyramid to like this
it's like a
flower
yeah,
diagram with like water and earth and
yeah,
fire in it.
yeah. It makes it
It
look
was
cute. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm trying all kinds of stuff. I like started looking into. I mean, it wasn't all bad because I started learning a little bit about like investing, like stock, like in stocks and stuff like that. I started learning about like take like financial education, like credit and stuff like that. So it wasn't all bad. And I think that's probably how I ended. I came across a lot of stuff at that point in time that I still like a couple podcasts, business podcasts that I learned about that I got into during that time. And then I came across an ad of yours, and I got on an email list of yours. And there was another person. I think it's Andy Authentic. Andy Authentic? No, it wasn't Andy Authentic. It was another guy. His name starts with an A. But I'm getting emails from both of you guys because I came across both of you, and those were the only two people that were talking about like raising prices of the haircut without like adding in a bunch of stuff, without like being fully booked out. I can't remember the name of the other guy. But yeah, so in August when the school shut down, I had some free time. My wife hadn't had our second child yet, so one day I'm at Chipotle, just having some time to myself, and I clicked on one of your emails. I was like, I'm gonna watch one of the case studies. And I think it was about South Bay Chris. I watched the case study. It was like probably like 20, 25 minutes long. I think it may have been longer than that. But I remember watching it, and I remember being like scared because I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna get to $100. But if I can get just somewhere, if I can get to 50, if he can help me get to 50, like I'll be good. So I didn't even tell my wife about it. I just went ahead and like signed up for a call. I take that back. I didn't initially sign up for a call. I watched the case study and then I waited a little bit, but I was still on your email list. So I'm steady getting emails, and then I was like, F it, man, I'm gonna do it. Like I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna see at least like let me at least see what's gonna be required, what he's talking about, how we can go about doing it. Let me just at least see, because I've tried everything else. Like I've looked into starting a product line. I've thought about doing T-shirts. I've thought about doing the instructor, like all of this other stuff. Like, let me at least see, because at this point, like, I feel like I'm tapped out, and I already knew that I didn't want to be the guy that cut more hair, because like that previous Thanksgiving, I cut like 30 heads in a day. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Mm.
That night, like I pulled up to my driveway at like midnight, and I was like, I can't be that dude. Like
Yeah.
I can't be this guy. So I knew that that wasn't gonna be me. Like I knew I wasn't gonna be the person that cut a bunch of heads on the days that I worked. So I went ahead and signed up for the call, and then like a day before the call, my wife went into labor. She was in like preliminary labor. I already knew that this was probably it, so I went ahead and messaged you and let you know that I needed to reschedule.
Got it. And then I think we might have booked another call like a month out. And then
It was like 2 weeks. It was like
okay.
2 weeks. We got past like that first window.
Yeah.
Like we kind of got out of all of the dust and smoke of like her first being born.
Gotcha.
It was something that I knew I didn't want to wait on. Like
Gotcha.
I wanted to at least find out like what it was about, what the program was about.
Yeah. And I know on the call, like, I knew you were like super, I don't want to say skeptical, but like there was like some like doubt of like, could I even do this in Tennessee? Obviously, like I didn't have a student. I was like very honest, I'm like, I don't have anybody in Tennessee like to give you a case study of, but like I'm very confident like it's just a bit more about running the business, not just where you're located at. I guess for you, what was kind of going through your head? Like seeing this and like, again, too, you didn't really want to go to 150. You're like, 60, 80, that is what it is. Why did you make the decision to join? Because I know we had a call, you had to sit on it for like a night, and then you decided like, all right, let's go ahead and like pull the trigger. What was kind of going through your head, and what was that decision process like for you?
Honestly, the biggest drawback for me was the amount of the investment. That was the only reason why we had to wait 24 hours, because at that point my wife wasn't working. She had stopped working like right before COVID. It was weird because I was making just enough for me to cover all our bills, and I hadn't even started getting paid by the school yet, because I was considered an instructor's assistant. So I was working on getting my license to be an instructor, and then I would start getting paid. So I'm like, well, just in the 3 days, I'm covering our bills. Once I get my instructor's license, like we'll be good. She wanted to stay home. She wanted to stop working. So February, she stopped working, and that was like 2 weeks before COVID hit the U.S. real hard. So after COVID, like we were bleeding. You know what I mean? We had a good savings, but we were bleeding, and I had to figure out a way for us to reverse course. So that's the only thing that made me hesitant, was I wasn't sure that we would be able to handle dipping into our savings that much. I just didn't want to get scammed, because I felt like I lost a lot of money in the Susu thing. Like I didn't want to get scammed again. But after we got on the call and like you assured me like, no, it's gonna be me working with you, because I had got on some calls like for other programs, and like it wasn't the person that you see in the ad. It was like, oh, you won't work with them personally. They have a team, and I'm like, nah. So when you assured me that like I'm gonna be working with you, it's not like, it's not some get-rich-quick thing. Like, it's going to require work. It's not going to require paying for a bunch of ads. Like, so the call, like, talking to you personally, like, settled my, like, I don't want to get scammed thing. I was like, okay, this doesn't seem like a scam. I was unsure if maybe it could work, because, some of the guys that I saw you use as examples prior to me joining or taking the call were guys that were in like California. You being from California yourself, tough in Vegas, guys that were in like a little bit bigger cities. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm wondering if it can work here.
Yeah.
So it was just just not sure if it could work where I'm at, and then just making the investment.
Got it.
Because where we were financially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I know once you got on, because we were talking about this too. Now you're in the program, cool. Of course, it's not a get rich quick thing. There has to be a lot of work done. And I noticed like early on there was like some initial success, and then there was a period where I just didn't even hear from you. I had to reach out like, yo, where you at? Like, what's going on? I guess, like struggles you had in the program, because of course right now success, you're at 60, you're also moved into your own studio, looking to go up to 80, like hopefully the next couple months. But like, what was that like? The biggest struggle for you early on? What was that? I mean, especially with family. Also, your wife owns a business now too. She wasn't working at the time. Like, was that just a mixture of things? And if so, like, what? How did you get yourself out of that?
Yeah, so like one of the biggest struggles is dealing with, having two small kids and like family life and not having the time that like if I were single or even if it was just me and my wife, the amount of time that I would have been able to dedicate to it, I probably could have taken off a lot faster. So it's dealing with a newborn, getting the hang of also like I had never created content before, right? Like I would take pictures and stuff like that. But I had never created content before. So, you know, just taking on the mindset of like understanding how to create content. But then once I got the hang of like creating it, it was just taking the time to actually and learning how to edit it the right way. That was really a big struggle of mine in the beginning was like the time that it took to edit because I didn't understand the difference between cutting hair and creating content.
Absolutely.
So that's what caused and I'm thinking the whole time is like I just need to get faster at editing and then, a couple months later I end up realizing that it wasn't the editing phase that I was struggling with, it was the creation phase that was causing the editing phase to be so much more longer. So it was not understanding that and then just finding the time and the energy to dedicate to the program when you have a newborn. I think my son hadn't even turned 2 yet. So we had 2 kids under 2. My wife is going through postpartum. So it was just really finding the pockets of time and and honestly the motivation to be like, okay, this is something that I'm gonna dedicate to.
What did you do that worked for that? Like to get you the motivation to also find the time? Was it just more being more strict on your time, making sure like everything's tightened up, stepping up to the next level, and then how did you sustain that over a period of time too?
It was just about being intentional. It was being very intentional about setting out work windows, and my wife helped a lot too because she needed her own work windows. So we had to be very intentional about scheduling work windows and holding to those work windows as much as we could. And then also for me, it was, and I had to learn this, even though we had work windows, I had to learn the discipline to like focus in the time that I had to work. That's when I'm working and when I'm not trying to, because it made me scatterbrained because like I would have my work windows and then like when I wasn't working, if I'm like sitting on the couch and my son's like playing by himself, let me try to do some editing real quick and it made me scatterbrained because I wasn't focusing in on whatever it was that I was doing. And there's a point in the module where you talk about this where like you said like you even took the point where like if you were just sitting down eating, like you made sure that you focused on if you were just eating a sandwich, like you focused on eating that sandwich and not thinking about or doing anything else and not multitasking. So that was something that I had to create real discipline in doing. Is whatever I'm focusing on, that's what I'm focusing on and not trying to multitask.
Got it. Okay. And then I guess for you, because again, you're at 25. When did we go to 40? Like I know we made a jump to 40. Was that like in January this year or was that in February this year?
In March. It
March.
was in March.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know
March or April that we went up.
Got it. Okay. What was the hardest thing about that for you? Because like again, before that, you had only done shit, dude. The biggest price raise you did was $8. So going from like again $8 price raise and to me like 15 like again like it's like it was kind of like a mini boost for us. How did you take that? What was like going through your head? What happened with clientele? How did you take that?
I was nervous. I was nervous as hell. My wife was like rooting for me. Like she was sitting next to me when you told me like it was time for us to go up. And I probably could have been went up, but like at that point, like, and you even mentioned it, I was so stuck on like the technical parts of the program, and I felt like everything had to go a certain way. And that was something that I struggled with in the program as well, is like understanding that like this is really like catered to each person's individual business and the way it's going. But for me, like I'm so technical that like I felt like I had to check these things off, and so that probably delayed my. I probably could have went up a month, a month and a half, 2 months prior to that. But um, so I was just nervous, man, because I'm like, what are people gonna think? I was that barber who like thought that you had to build like these super strong bonds and relationships with everybody. So I'm like, these people are gonna look at me like I'm like they're gonna look at me differently. What are people gonna say? I didn't even announce it on that price raise. I didn't even announce it on Instagram. I just sent like all my clients messages and stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't tell any guys in the barber shop that I was going up. And so the day that it's so weird. The day it was like the second day that my price raise went into effect. I hadn't told nobody I was going up. I'm cutting a guy who's in the military, and he had his uniform on that day. So when he walked in, everybody saw him in uniform. The guy that was getting his hair cut by the barber next to me saw him. So when he got ready to get done, he was like, "Hey man, how much do you charge? I want to pay for that guy's haircut." And I'm like, "Oh."
Oh shit! Because you hadn't said nothing at this point.
So I'm like,
Jeez.
"Oh." So I took a deep breath. I'm like, "You just gotta, whatever you do, you just gotta say it with confidence." So I'm
Yeah.
like,
Get that
I was
get
like,
that
"Oh
bass
man,
in your voice.
Yeah. I didn't know. Yeah. So initially when he asked, I didn't know that he was trying to pay. Like I thought he was asking to refer somebody. So I'm like, it's $40 for a haircut, 55 haircut and beard. And the barber that was cutting his hair like looked over at me and was like, $40, and I was like, oh.
Oh
I'm like,
shit!
cat's out the bag now. I'm like, oh.
Damn, you never said this on a Q&A call before, dude. That's hilarious.
Yeah, man. It was, oh man. When I tell you, like, I was a nervous. I was
Yeah.
sweating. I could feel my hands start to shake. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's out now. It's out now.
Yeah, and I mean, did you get comp? Because again, too, I think the biggest thing, a lot of barbers think like coming in. I mean, I think you probably had the same thing. We probably went over this. Of like, oh, like what's gonna happen when I charge more than everybody else in the shop? Like, maybe there might be some of that dynamic, but at the end of the day, you built it back up again. Like you were able to build a business at 40, and like after that initial, like I guess, turbulence of just that shock, like whoa, you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
There really was no issue, but like what did you have to do to kind of get over like those initial? I mean, we can call them like jabs because people do like kind of
Yeah.
jab at you when they first find out that pricing, whether it be clients or the barbers. How did you kind of like get over that? Because of course, like relationships were very big to you, and I know that kind of did affect you a little bit.
Yeah. It changed the entire dynamic of how I felt about going to the shop because it wasn't like it just stopped initially, and then it wasn't even just that. There were other changes that I was making to the business. Not offering edge ups anymore, or like not at least not offering a price for edge ups, right? Like not offering a separate price for edge ups, not offering a separate price for kids cuts, not taking kids under a certain age anymore, right? So these were all things that I was getting jabbed at about. Me taking more time like at that time I also, made my appointments stretch a little bit longer. So me taking more time and cutting less hair. So I'm hearing like comments about all of this stuff. And it kind of affected me in a sense that like I felt like I thought that there was a like a certain level of respect between all of us. And I felt like that mutual respect had kind of dissipated at that point because I thought that, once you guys found out that like you would kind of cheer me on or at least follow suit. Like that's what I was hoping, like the guys that would follow suit. But really I kind of became an outlier. So
Yeah.
it was tough at first. And when you had reached out to me like, yo, what's going on? That's when I kind of, it wasn't, I didn't even realize how much it was affecting me until you reached out to me and it kind of made me like audit myself and my own thinking. And that was the first time like I realized that that's what it was. Like I didn't enjoy and look forward to going to the barbershop as much as I did before.
Yeah, I think like, I mean that's a very valid thing too. Like it just your, I mean you can't just hate going into the place that you work at and expect to continue to grow it. Like it's gonna be like this thing that's always kind of, I guess, nagging at you or bugging you. I mean, how did you kind of get through it though? Like, cause I know, I mean, this was like, fuck, dude, like March. So from March until you just got into your own private suite in September. So was it
Yeah.
just kind of like again too like understanding like look this is like because I know we had multiple talks about this like look this is your business, this is where you want to go, not everybody's going to be like agreeing with it or like whatever it may be like coming with you like but you can't allow that to like hold you back. um
Yeah.
how did again too like how did you just like kind of get through those months? Was it more of just like all right cool like pull up my big boy pants and like kind of take these jabs, or just understand the longer term vision that you were trying to build?
It was a combination of things. So it was kind of like you had told me in the DMs, like, you said your dad told you, like in baseball, like sometimes you gotta play your own game.
Mm.
And it took me back to when I played basketball, and like that's the thing, like you have to play your own game. And so I kind of got into that mentality. So sometimes I would have to go to work with, my headphones on. Sometimes I would go to work and get there a little bit early, and I would sit in my car instead of walking right in. I would sit in my car and maybe listen to a podcast, or maybe not listen to anything, and kind of, get my mind prepared for what I needed to do. So there was that, and then, you know, like I said, like figuring out that like I could be a different character when I'm at the barbershop, right? Which helped me in my business and my content. So just being that different character and being a different, like the guy that didn't care about as highly as much about like the creating the relationships, and it was more so about like building the business, and the right relationships will be built from that. I also tried, initially I wasn't even going to leave the shop. There's a room that's off in the back that the owner had built out into a suite for him, but like he's got two locations and he's mostly at the other location. So I remember reaching out to him and being like, hey, I'll pay more if you let me have the spot in the back. He wasn't willing to let it go. I was like, okay. So, and after that, it was just like, okay, well, I don't have the option to kind of have my own space. So I put it on myself to like create my own space. So if I got to listen to my headphones while I'm working to create my own space, that's what I do. If I have to become a new character and take my mind somewhere else and detach from the barbershop conversations and stuff like that, then that's what I'll do. And so it was a combination of different things that helped me kind of press forward.
Cool. I guess I mean I definitely want to like kind of dive into this a little bit just real quick. Obviously, charging 60 in your new space, you've gone through all these trial tribulations like over the past year or so. What do you think is the biggest difference? We're going to touch on two things. One, the business owner, Geordann, as from $25 being booked out at that space prior to where we met to now, and then also the family man, the husband, the father, at right now versus when you were charging 25. What are those two different? I mean, what are the differences between those two things?
Yeah. So as far as the business owner, at 25, prior to me joining the program, I didn't look at myself as a business owner. I looked at myself as just a barber and basically somebody who was self-employed. So versus now, like I actually look at this as like it's a business and less of an employee mentality and more of a business owner mentality, that I have a business that depends on me operating it a certain way. And the cool thing is, and I shared this with you in the DMs, is like the difference between being able to explain to people, like when they ask about the price raise this last time, and being able to explain to them, hey, look, the point of a business is to increase profit, and you don't increase profit by increasing your labor costs, right? And labor costs not just being paying somebody out, but like my time being dedicated. So working more hours to make more money doesn't equal higher profit. That equals more labor costs, which means I'm making the same profit. And people understanding that and being like, well, you're right. Like the goal of a business is to make profit and to increase those profits. Whereas at 25, I didn't look at it like that. It was just I'm a barber, I service people, and I can eventually probably make more money if I make my service better. If I create bonds, if I make people become emotionally attached to me in some kind of way, like then they would, eventually I'll be able to go up and they won't mind it because of the value that I presented to them. Whereas now, like I understand that like I can still present value to people, but it doesn't have to be in me giving more of myself or giving more time and things like that. So that's the difference in the business owner that I look at myself as now versus before when I just looked at myself as a barber. Um, as far as like the family man, um, I'm able to be more present. My kids probably see me more now, especially my son. Like my well, I have an older son that lives out of state, but
Mm.
when he comes in, I'm able to be here more. Whereas before, when he would come into town, like through the week, Tuesday through Saturday, he wouldn't really see me. He'd probably see me Saturday evening and Sundays, and then Mondays. Whereas now, like when he comes into town, he has more of my presence. Um, and even being able to help my wife with building her business from some of the things that I'm learning, and like us just having that tandem to where like her business is taking off because I'm able to provide her like that business owner mindset versus before I probably wouldn't have been able to do that, and she kind of would probably been at this on her own, and she
Mm.
would have. So being able to be present, and being focused and like really being able to have that intentionality of like when I'm with my kids, I am with them. Like I'm not worried about what's going on Instagram. I'm not taking calls from people, and I'm not cutting into their time by going to the shop on days that I don't work or times that I don't work because I'm just trying to, build relationships and make people feel like I'm here for them.
Sure. What does your wife do again? I kind of want you to give her like your wife a little shout out for her
Yeah,
business.
yeah. So my wife, Courtney Stower, she's the Equipped Mama. She has a business called the Equipped Mama. She is by trade or by occupation, she's a maternal newborn specialist, a specialized registered nurse. And also coming soon, she will be a licensed lactation consultant.
Hmm.
So she basically helps women with educating them on how to get through their pregnancy and labor. And then after labor, she helps them with breastfeeding. And so she does lactation consulting as well. So,
And they can kind of like people who are interested could obviously reach out to her through Instagram or anything like that.
yeah, Instagram, Equipped Mama, MAMA. Her website is the same thing, and you can probably find her on Facebook as well.
Dope. Um, I guess for you, like, I guess just personally, what did you find like most impactful or most useful to you just in the elevated mentorship program? Like, was it one module, 1 week, or like what was it specifically that like just had the most impact on you?
The just the mindset behind
Mm.
everything that we do. And I think you really dive into that in the beginning in week one, and like just changing your mindset and your worldview and the way that you view things, um, as far as how you view money, how you view making a lot of money, how you view work, how you view business. So just changing my worldview on everything, and that doesn't just carry over into like in my business, but like in regular life to the point like where me and my wife have conversations and we talk about like changing the way we talk about stuff. Like we
Mm.
don't say like, oh, that's expensive anymore. Like more so we think about like, okay, that's a little more than we're willing to pay right now, but how can we figure out a way that we can get that,
Yeah.
right? Not worried about like saving, but like what can we use money for to help move businesses forward or help move our life forward? Like obviously we do save and we
Yeah.
still are cognizant of where our money goes, but instead of just trying to save like the world teaches you, like what can we do with this money? What can we invest it in that's going to help make our life and our businesses easier and better?
Yeah.
And I don't think that I would be able to look at it that way had I not joined the program.
Hmm. What was your view of like making a lot of money or just money in general prior?
Uh, so I thought that I've never come across anybody who personally, except for maybe one or two people who made six figures.
Hmm.
And they did it. One guy is a close friend of mine. He's a realtor. He was like one of the first people. And then one of my closest friends that I grew up with, but he's an engineer. So he has two bachelor's degrees.
Sure.
So my thinking was that you either had to have a degree in something in some field that paid a lot, or you had to like have a talent where whether it be art or film or music or be an athlete to make a lot of money. And I looked at people like that as like they were different, like they were a different type of person, and they lived in a different world.
Interesting. So you didn't even like think it was like you almost created a lot of separation between yourself and somebody who makes a lot of money then.
Yeah, absolutely. My goal prior to joining the program, like this was like my ultimate goal for barbering was to be able to get to make 80,000 a year.
Dude, you're gonna fucking crush that.
that,
If you're not already,
that was
yeah,
that when me and my wife met and we talked about it. I'm like, yeah, eventually, maybe 18 years in, like I'd like to be making $80. I mean, $80,000 a year, right? Because that was something that I felt was feasible. Even though there were people that said like barbers made, six figures. I'm like, well, the only barbers that I could think of that were like that are guys like that cut, athletes and celebrities, guys like Kenny
yeah.
Duncan, Curtis Smith, and guys like that. So I didn't see myself at that level of in that type of world.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people think that in order to make a lot of money as a barber, you have to cut these celebrities or you have to be a celebrity yourself. I'm like, no, it's like civilians will pay that. Like when I say civilian, regular life people, it's just again to build the right business, like set it up properly, understand how to acquire clients, and scale up from that. And you can easily do that. I mean, like, dude, you're doing it in Tennessee, which again, too, I'm always hyped again too whenever you have like a win, because like I just always remember Jordan like when you were at 25 bucks, like, I don't know. And I always see you, I'm like, you fucking did it. Like, you just had to conquer that, like, little thing in your head to then apply everything we have in the program. And it just, I mean, the proof is right there. I'm really, honestly, I'm really proud of you, dude, to be quite honest.
I appreciate it.
Because I
I'm
know,
proud of myself.
as you should be, dude. Honestly, like I said, there was a lot of times where like I would see you, you would really be on. I could tell in your voice on the Q&A calls like you were struggling, right? And you were trying to like articulate how to like ask the right questions. And then I saw you go away. I'm like, I need to reach out to this dude. Like, all right, let's get you back on par. And it was like literally after that one time, you were just like, boom, locked back in.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
guess,
got locked in.
yeah. I guess for you, like, dude, this is like probably the longest interview we've done. So I mean, it's just you just like did a phenomenal job just kind of taking us through like your journey. I guess like what's one piece of advice you would have for somebody who was like a similar situation as you, maybe at 25 bucks before we met? Again, maybe family, really bogged down, looking to do other things with, because they want to make more money, don't think it's possible barbering. What's one piece of advice you would give to them?
I think the biggest thing for me, the biggest um, that's helped me the most, and I'll go back to it, is intentionality with everything. So, locking in and being very intentional. And I think that's the biggest difference. Even with like doing the tracking and the worksheets and stuff like that, like after you reach back out to me, like I really like locked in with that stuff too. Like not just tracking my heads per working day in NCA, but like really tracking, everything. Like that NCA tracking sheet has been gold for me. Like it's something that I make sure that I do every day, if not every other day at most. But like just being intentional and locking in on everything and carrying that mentality into every facet of life, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with your wife, business, yourself. I think that's where most people lack the discipline at, is being a, because everything in the world is like it's so much. It's all at you at all the time, and everything wants your attention. If you can establish the discipline to be intentional about everything that you do, the stuff will be easy. It'll get easy. The hardest part is like focusing on being intentional. But once you created that habit, stuff will come easy, and then like focusing on the right things. I think one of the biggest things that like I really heard you talk about recently on your podcast, on the YouTube videos, and in our Q&A calls is like focusing on perfecting the business. Like, don't get caught up on the price point, the price raises. Don't get caught up on like the views that you get in the video or anything like that. But like understanding that all of these things are pieces of and components of you perfecting the business. And if you can focus on that and not not get so caught up on like the views that you get, because those are gonna go up and down. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can look at anybody in the program and see that like their views will go up and down, right? And like I'm sure anybody in the program can speak to like even your clientele flow at times is gonna go up and down. So if you can just focus on like staying locked in and like perfecting the business and moving it forward, like that'll take away a lot of distractions, things that'll get you down, because like you understand that that's just a part of it, and it'll correct itself if you just focus on steadily perfecting the business.
Yeah, it's again to not looking too much in the short term, but always have the long term view and be working towards that, and not get like again to maybe just what you said, just not get too emotionally caught up in like those sways. Because as a business owner, like you know now, everything's gonna fucking sway, dude. You have something really good, and then it'll sway back to like really bad, and then really good. If you just hang on, just like focus on building the right thing, like it'll all like the sways will kind of even themselves out, and the average will always be good for you. Um,
Yeah, that was a tough thing for me because I'm so analytical and like
uh,
technical. So every time that I see that something is off track, I'm automatically trying to solve what is it that went wrong. And
yeah,
sometimes I can get too caught up in like the dips and the sways and
yeah.
trying to correct them, and like so I've had to take a step back and like, okay, let some stuff like just wait a little bit and like let stuff correct itself. But yeah, that's something that I'm also changing my mindset as well, is like
Yeah.
not trying to correct everything, but
Yeah.
like give stuff some time, let it breathe.
Yeah, let it breathe. And then I like, again, too, I think most people, because I'll talk to a lot of people, and I've been very, like, more vocal about, like, it's all about problem solution, find the problem, solve it, and you should get the growth. But some people, they'll try to find any one problem and try to solve that. And it's like, that's where time allocation goes in. Like, the best thing to do prior is, like, make sure it's the right problem that will get you the right
Yeah,
result, because you could spend a lot of time solving the wrong problem and nothing's going to happen, and you just wasted like 3 6 months, and then it's just like fuck, all right, back to the drawing board again. um
yeah.
I guess for you to kind of wrapping up, like what's one thing you might say to somebody, like again, to that might be on the fence, that's like been seeing a lot of the interviews, seeing a lot of like shit, the program on the ads, maybe seeing it on Instagram. What's one piece of advice or just one thing you would say to somebody who's just sitting on the fence, doesn't know if this is like they should pull the trigger or not in the program?
Um, if you're not sure if the program works, it does work. Um, it absolutely works. It. I told my wife this a couple months ago before I even did my first price raise, that like regardless of like increase in income, like just the change in my mindset from being in this program, from hearing from you and other guys, and like being around other like-minded individuals twice a week, and the change in my worldview has not only made a huge difference in my business, but in my personal life as well. And it's even carried over to my wife's business.
Mm.
So like if you're worried about like joining, just understand that like the way that you view things will never be the same once you join. And I think that alone is worth twice, three times the investment that you would make to join the program, because you like it's like putting on a different pair of glasses. It's like somebody like it's like driving with like a smudgy like a windshield, and then somebody comes along and like cleans the windshield. It's like
Yeah.
why, like your eyes are open. So like definitely that, and just be willing to put in the work. Like know that you got a bunch of guys who and women. You got a bunch of guys and women who are in the program who are supportive, who will push you, who will encourage you. So even if the people that you work around don't, like, we got you. And that's the biggest thing too, is like leaning on people who can be supportive.
Yeah, I think also too what's like really important to touch on, like again, like what I always typically see is the reason why people haven't built the business is typically like those things that always hold them back, like pulling a trigger on a program, like oh, does it work, does it not work? That like doubt, like it shows up everywhere else in the business. Like you can always kind of pinpoint things. Like we'll go through it on a Q&A call, like if somebody's not doing something or something's like breaking and they're not like fixing it, we'll kind of just like, all right, where else is this popping up at? Like let's kind of fix all these other things, and you'll always see all these interconnections. So dude, I'm fucking hyped because again, too, you're at 60, looking to get you to 80, and I think like it's gonna be interesting to see like again, too. I think you can get to 150, kind of seeing where you go from here. But it's been fun. It's been nothing but fun and an honor to be working with you so far, dude. And thank you also for trusting me. I know your wife had a big influence on you joining the program. I just really want to say thank you guys for trusting me, of like with your business, with your future, because it's been nothing but fun to like see you grow, especially in Tennessee, and kind of taking everything on so far, dude.
Yeah, I can say without like this is not exaggeration at all that like joining this program has been life changing for us
Mm.
because like I never I never uh thought that I could be doing some of the things that I'm doing now. Like I didn't even know that they were possible. And just seeing like just being able to see the changes in myself, um, and like yeah, this program has definitely been life changing for me, and I'm excited to see like where I can go next. I'm really just excited. This sounds weird, but like I'm excited to see like the next challenge that pops up in the business, so that I can figure out how to fix it.
Yeah, that's when you make a big shift. You're not even afraid of problems anymore. You know they're gonna come. And you know you have the tools, and you're like, bring it on, dude. I'm fucking ready for this thing because
Yeah,
it's just a fun game at that point in time.
yeah. Like my wife keeps asking me like how much do you think your clientele is gonna slow down? I'm like I don't know. I don't care because if it happens, I think what like I remember seeing Angel in the group saying that like he broke his business and then like he built it back up, and like that was like super encouraging for me because it's like okay, like he broke like somebody actually said they broke their business and
Yeah,
like he fixed it though like so I'm like well that means that I can do it like if it breaks it breaks like
yeah.
but I know that I have the tools and you know that we can figure it out and I can build it back up so that's the exciting thing.
Absolutely, dude. Well, thank you for going ahead and like making this interview. What is it? We're at an hour already. Probably you definitely. I don't know if anybody else will top this. So you top dog in the interview category because this has also been like really insightful for me too. Of just like I always find it interesting. Like I learn a lot more about everybody just doing these interviews. Like again, your story, kind of what's going on in your head, and also what you find interesting. So I appreciate your time on here and looking forward to continue working with you for the years to come, dude.
Yeah, for sure. Same here.